Imagine this, a gun with no serial number that looks more like a rusty flashlight than a firearm, and was built for just one purpose: to end a life in total, absolute silence. Stay with me till the end, because what you're about to learn is straight out of a spy thriller, except this is real. Forget Hollywood, forget James Bond. This is the true story of the Welrod, a British-made, suppressed assassination weapon designed to leave no witnesses and not even a sound. We'll dive into how a secret British lab created this silent killer, why it became the go-to weapon for spies and resistance fighters, and the chilling reason it stayed in service long after World War II ended. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear was never meant to be public. To understand why the Welrod looks so strange, and why it became one of the most feared weapons in the shadows, we need to go back to the early 1940s. After Nazi Germany invaded France, Britain stood practically alone in Europe. The traditional rules of war no longer applied. That's when the British government realized they needed a new kind of warfare, one that didn't rely on tanks or bombers, but on sabotage, infiltration, and silent, targeted killings. They called it the Dirty War. And to fight this dirty war, Britain created the Special Operations Executive, the SOE, a secret organization with one goal: infiltrate enemy lines, spy, sabotage, and, when necessary, eliminate targets without making a sound. But there was one problem. There was no weapon silent enough for the job. And that's where Hugh Reeves enters the story. Hugh Reeves was not your typical engineer. He worked in Station 9, a top-secret weapons research facility hidden in the English countryside. Station 9 wasn't just any lab. It was a playground for inventors, spies, and saboteurs. Their job? Create weapons that broke all the rules. And Hugh's challenge was simple, but terrifying. Build a gun that kills without being heard. The result was something the world had never seen. A pistol with no serial number, no markings, and no traditional grip. At first glance, it looked like a bicycle pump, or maybe an old flashlight. And that was the point. The Welrod was designed not to look like a gun, and more importantly, not to leave a trace. But how exactly did it work? And why did even trained soldiers fear using it? That is what you're about to find out next. Here's where the Welrod truly stands apart from any other gun of its era. First, its appearance. No visible trigger, no traditional grip. Instead, the magazine itself acted as the handle. It held 8 rounds in the modest but reliable .32 ACP caliber, the same cartridge used by the Colt Pocket Hammerless, a compact civilian pistol. Later, a rarer version appeared, chambered in 9mm. But that was far less common. But the weirdest feature? The Welrod wasn't even semi-automatic. Yes, you heard that right. This was a manual bolt-action pistol, just like a sniper rifle, but miniaturized. Why? Because in a semi-automatic gun, the second loudest sound after the shot is the slide cycling and the shell casing hitting the floor. And for the SOE, that noise was unacceptable. So every shot from the Welrod was manually loaded, bolt by bolt, allowing the shooter to control every sound, every movement. Even the trigger was little more than a bent piece of wire. Uncomfortable? Definitely. But effective? Without question. And now, let's talk about the real magic. Its suppressor. The Welrod's integrated suppressor was a masterpiece of wartime engineering. Inside, the barrel had small ports, letting gas bleed off into an expansion chamber before even reaching the suppressor body. The suppressor itself contained 14 metal baffles, and at the muzzle, 3 solid rubber discs. These rubber discs weren't pre-perforated. They stayed sealed until a bullet punched through them during firing. The result? True battlefield-grade stealth. For the first 10, maybe 14 shots, the Welrod was almost inaudible. Some field reports from the time claim that even at distances of over 4 meters, the shot couldn't be recognized. Not as a gunshot, not even as anything mechanical. In fact, in the few surviving videos today, the shot sounds like a soft cough or less. And this was only the beginning, because the more you fired it, the louder it got as the rubber discs wore out. But in most missions, the Welrod didn't need more than a few shots, and those few were usually enough. But silence comes with a cost. The Welrod was never meant to be comfortable. It weighed just over 1 kilogram, measured nearly 36 centimeters long, and its trigger, little more than a bent wire, barely shaped for a human finger. No ergonomics, no safety features, just deadly simplicity. And while its .32 ACP caliber was modest, it didn't need stopping power. Why? Because the Welrod was designed for point-blank range execution. Get close, pull the bolt, aim, and end the target without alarming anyone, even standing just meters away. Field reports suggest that at distances over 4 meters, a Welrod shot was virtually indistinguishable from ambient noise. Can you imagine standing guard and your partner drops without you even realizing? That was the terror of the Welrod. But after around 10 to 14 shots, the rubber wipes began to wear, and the pistol became progressively louder. That's why Welrod operators often carried only a single loaded magazine. For them, one shot, one kill was the mission. So, who exactly wielded this ghost gun? The Welrod was never issued to frontline troops. You wouldn't find it in the trenches or in open battlefield engagements. Instead, it became the signature weapon of British commandos, SOE agents, resistance fighters across Europe, from France to Norway, from Belgium to Poland. Anywhere Allied agents operated behind enemy lines, there was a chance a Welrod was close by. And here's something few people know. Many of its users weren't even soldiers. Some were civilians, ordinary people, recruited, trained, and handed a gun that didn't look like a gun for missions that no civilian should ever face. Sabotage missions, nighttime infiltrations, selective assassinations. This was the Welrod's battlefield. And there's documented evidence of Allied agents sneaking up on sentries, firing point blank, while the rest of the patrol never heard a thing. Imagine being that sentry and never knowing who was out there in the dark. You'd think the Welrod story ended with World War II. But here's where things get even more intriguing. After the war, the Welrod didn't disappear. Far from it. For decades, it stayed in classified weapons catalogs, used by the CIA, U.S. Special Forces, and, of course, the British SAS. During the Vietnam War, there are verified reports of the Welrod being used by MACV-SOG units, America's most secretive special operations group at the time. Their tactic? Ambush enemy patrols, wound one soldier silently, eliminate the rest with unsuppressed fire, and take the wounded man for interrogation. Cruel? Absolutely. But in war, information was everything. And the Welrod delivered silence where it mattered. Later, there were whispers of Welrod appearances during the Falklands War in 1982, and even during Operation Desert Storm in Iraq, decades after its original design. But of course, nothing official, no public confirmations, because when you need a weapon, that leaves no trace and no sound. The Welrod is hard to beat. And here's where things get even murkier. To this day, nobody knows for sure how many Welrods were actually made. Some sources suggest as few as 4,000 units. Others claim over 14,000. But the truth is, we'll probably never know. Why? Because the Welrod was designed to leave no trail, no serial numbers, no manufacturing codes, no country of origin stamped on the metal. It was a ghost, built to erase itself after every mission. Even identifying between models is difficult. The first prototype, known as the Mark II, the main production model, Mark IIA. And for those rare, more powerful 9mm versions, the Mark I. According to declassified manuals from the era, The Welrod was considered effective up to 23 meters by day and only 7 meters at night. But for the missions it was built for, that was more than enough. Because remember, this wasn't a battlefield weapon. This was an execution tool. So, is the Welrod still in use today? Officially, the answer is no. Unofficially, that's another story. As modern technology advanced, new suppressed weapons took its place, like the HK Mark 23, used by the U.S. Navy SEALs, with integrated suppressors and slide lock systems, firing heavy .4 5-caliber rounds. Compared to that, the Welrod is ancient. But here's the thing. If you needed a gun that leaves no brass on the ground, no signature on a casing, and almost no noise, there are very few tools in the world that do the job like the Welrod. Could some still be locked away, deep inside intelligence agency armories, maybe waiting for a mission that requires something so silent, so invisible, it might as well not exist at all? Today, the Welrod holds a unique place in the history of warfare. It's not just a weapon. It's a symbol of how far nations will go to win in the shadows. For gun collectors, original Welrods are now priceless relics. Some sit in museums, others in private collections. But in the world of covert operations, the design philosophy lives on. Every modern suppressed pistol owes something to what Hugh Reeves created back in a hidden British lab during humanity's darkest war. Because at the end of the day, what's more terrifying? A gun you can see and hear, or one you never even knew was there until it was too late? If you enjoyed this dive into one of history's most secretive weapons, let me know in the comments below. What other hidden or forgotten firearms should we cover next? And hey, if you want to learn about another silent killer popping up right here on your screen, I'm Huberto, and this was Gun Insights. See you next time.